You start.
I start.
Okay, I'm Jay.
Why am I starting?
No, you're. Wait a the intro already.
And I'm Chris.
No, we have to do this again.
And we're the Grumpy Dungeon Masters.
No, you're doing this wrong. We're going to talk about Craig and how he's an orc.
Craig is an orc. We will come up with his backstory slowly but surely over the next couple months. We know that he's an orc and that he doesn't want to leave, or he does want to leave.
Definitely not a half orc, full orc.
100% full orc.
Yeah.
Craig doesn't want to play. Craig just wants to have a proper family.
So two people sucked into a Sphere of Annihilation in the last 10 minutes of a game. This harkens back to the discussion we were having right before you decided to run the game. Is how ruthless as a DM do you want to be?
So this is the situation they were in. They were approaching the 6th floor of Tomb of Annihilation. And spoilers for those who haven't played it. And if you haven't played it, turn this off and
if you haven't,
play it first.
Skip up about 2 minutes because we're going to go over this.
There were 3 hags that are on the bottom floor of Tomb of Annihilation. And they have the ability that once a day, they can mess with you while you're sleeping, essentially during a long rest, and make it so you don't get the benefits of that long rest and you take permanent damage. Now, I had not known that before I read that before I started DMing tonight. And the session was going to begin with a long rest. So being that they were so close to the hags, literally just a room away, and they were going to take a long rest, would the hags mess with the players? Now, the situation is a little bit more unique in that there are 3 hags. Each of them can do this ability. So 3 players would not get a long rest. That's really rough, especially when you've been tapped out for 2 sessions and you're barely surviving, and you need this in order to get that last push through the last level of the dungeon. So I had talked to you a little bit about before we started, like, how ruthless should I be? Should I do all 3? There are 3 players that survived from the previous campaign, and 2 that are brand new and fresh. So it doesn't matter if they had this effect happen to them. But the hags are watching people, so they know who is injured and who needs a long rest and who doesn't.
You have a lot to think about before deciding how ruthless you want to be in that scenario. You have 2 brand new. Are they brand new to role playing or brand new to D&D or to the party?
Brand new to the party.
Okay.
One was my wife because her amazing dragonborn chef was killed, and the other was the newer player who got decapitated.
Okay, so one of them is a. Go ahead. One's a new character, not a new player.
Right. They're both making new characters because, like I said, my wife's character got her dragonborn died, and the other one got decapitated, and her head was used as a mace to beat up another player.
That's amazing. I have to do that now.
Well, the funny part about this is that the guy has a specific ability from the tomb where he can't take slashing or piercing damage, but takes double from bludgeoning. So he lopped off the other person's head and threw it at him as an improvised weapon, and it hit him and hurt him real bad. So he hit him with a great axe, and it did no damage. So he picked up the head and started beating the guy with the head.
Hey, do what you got to do. So anyway, you have to think about, if it's new characters, it's way less of an issue. I thought it was new players. At that point, you could potentially just drive them away by murdering the whole party. Then everybody is familiar with Tomb of Annihilation as being ruthless and lethal and very, very dangerous as far as locations go. So if you want to hold up that mystique, you definitely don't allow them that rest. Then there's the in-game scenario of what would the hags do? Yeah, the hags would definitely prevent that rest.
Right, and if I would have known that they were there doing that, I would have started doing that at the beginning of Tomb of Annihilation and set that precedence right from the start. Hey, one of you or all three of you are not getting rest. So good luck.
Yeah, we are the game I'm playing in. We are also going through a similar scenario to that right now. It's set in the Maw, which is basically all undead all the time. Hag, we already ran into a hag, so we know that they live there. And every night we try to rest, there's a chance that we're unable to get a full night's rest.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean that really sucks.
So what I essentially wound up doing was I had one of the hags, the one who's watching them more intently, mess with one of the players. And it turned out to be the artificer guy. So his character would be pretty good without all his spells and stuff, but he's still lacking a lot of that. And he RP'd it great. I gave him the visions and the horrible sights and sounds and all that stuff, and he rolled with it pretty well. And he didn't get the long rest, and he was actually one of the two people sucked into the Sphere of Annihilation. So there's a room that if you teleport or something, or any kind of teleportation effect or planar shift, you wind up in this room. And I had ruled that if you put something into a bag of holding, since you're basically putting it into a pocket dimension, and that kind of falls into the rules of a separate plane of existence, and following the other rules of the tomb, that if you were to do anything like change dimensions, you doesn't work and you get teleported into this room. All the items that you put into a bag of holding get teleported to this room. So they took one of the crucial keys in the Tomb of Annihilation and dropped it in the tomb. Dropped it in this bag of holding. The second session of the game.
Mm-hmm.
So they've had this knowledge, or I had this knowledge, that they couldn't unlock the final door without this stupid key. So they all decided to jump in to a bag of holding and get teleported to this room. And they killed the monster in the room. Everything was fine. And there's two levers, a left one and a right one. And two of the players absconded because they know what the levers do. They know which one is the right one.
Right. Yeah, that was good.
But there is a line at the bottom that says, if they come back into this room a second time, the levers are switched. So, given that I had two players that had absconded from the choice, they had left it up to the other players. So my wife had the brilliant idea of walking over and pulling both levers at the same time.
Well, that pretty much guarantees a failure or a success, depending on, I guess, how the DM wants to do it.
So, this is how I handle it. So if they pulled the left one, I kept it just by the book. If they pulled the left one, the Sphere of Annihilation opened up and everyone got sucked inside and died. Or to pull the right one, we could teleport out of the room instantaneously. So I messaged you and asked you left or right and gave you no context clues. And you chose left. So
so I am responsible for their deaths. You guys are welcome. I have no remorse.
Oh my god. This has been one of the best sessions I've had in a while. A lot of it is due just to how well my players roleplay together. And so yeah, it sucks. They died. We lost the artificer, who's now on his fourth character, I think. And there's another good friend of mine that I met in Adventures League that's playing in this one, and he's playing this druid that he just absolutely loves. And the druid is very naive and very kind of like innocent to the world, He role plays her perfectly, and it's great. And one thing I had planned on doing was in the hag area, there's a prisoner they kept that's a clone, that is a clone of one of the adventurers that they're trying to get info from or intel from. And my wife's first character actually came back as a clone, and that's why she could play the same character twice,
Sure.
essentially.
Yeah.
But that character eventually died, and she started rolling better ones. What I had decided to do is because my friend plays this character so perfectly, he's really good at the game. He knows mostly all the rules. I was going to let him play the clone at the same time. Okay, so he would have two of this same character that he loves, and I just wanted to see what he would do with these two characters, just kind of like talking to each other. Because
Odd.
earlier in the session, he was stuck on the other side of the dungeon, like switching gears and stuff, and while everybody else fought. And so I still had him roll initiative for the fights. And whenever we came up to his roll spot in initiative, I'm like, "All right, Sam, it's you in the room," and he'd be like, "Oh yeah, I'm just talking to myself. Like, okay, when I was 7, I did this and I did that." I'm like, "Okay, moving on." So he's really good role playing this character. So I really wanted to see two of these characters kind of like talk to each other and what exactly would have happened. But like I said, his character got sucked into the Sphere of Annihilation, and
So
he got really sad because he has this personal rule for himself that he will never play a character once it dies.
it's a good
And
rule.
it's a cool rule. It's a hard rule to play. This is his favorite character he's ever built, and it just got pulled into a Sphere of Annihilation.
So two things on that. One, I'm not a fan of fifth edition Sphere of Annihilation. It it doesn't immediately kill things. It just does damage if they fail saving throws. I'm a
Well,
much bigger fan of earlier editions where it's just, yep, you're dead.
well, so Sphere of Annihilation. Well, I was calling it Sphere of Annihilation. It technically is not a Sphere of Annihilation. There is a couple places where one appears of this caliber.
Is it a more potent version of Sphere of Annihilation, maybe?
Essentially, it's the old one. It's
Oh,
basically
okay.
you touch
Okay.
it and everything is gone.
Yeah, perfect. Okay.
So yeah, so this trap room is actually pretty brutal.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
Sphere of Annihilation should be feared and respected, just like escalators. They're kind of a joke in fifth edition if you're going out of the Dungeon Master's Guide. The second thing about that, and it's more on Sam playing two of his same character. So I have one player who, when he first started in the Hobtown campaign, decided to play a gnome wizard by the name of Noodle. So then, a year later, 2 years later, whenever it was, my buddy Johnny starts up his campaign. Mike, I, he works a lot. He doesn't have a whole lot of time for D&D or creating character concepts and whatnot. So he's like, I'm just going to play Noodle. So he ends up creating the same character in a separate campaign. So just through, and we've been running these campaigns for 4 years, 6 years, however long. It just sort of became an in joke that there are millions of noodles out there. Uh, the Noodle Prime is in the Hobtown campaign, and at some point, and I've never written the whole story behind it, but at some point, he actually is a diviner, uh, focused wizard. So he ends up walking through time, which created a ripple effect, which made a noodle for every single realm out there.
the impossible noodle.
Yeah, yeah.
That's awesome.
At one point late in my own campaign, I had another noodle come back through time to hang out with the original noodle. So he ended up having a second noodle living in his house with him.
So what you need to do is you need to have the villain of a campaign, like a secret,
Being,
mysterious,
yeah,
be a
yeah,
noodle. Yeah.
yeah. Well, we've already kind of determined as well that there are different types of noodles. They are not all wizards. Like there's barbarian version of noodle, there's a necromancer noodle, you name it. But the one constant factor is they are all gnomes. They can be anything, but they have to be a gnome.
That's awesome.
Hmm.
So yeah, so I found it once where you're talking. It just says it's a gullet filled with impenetrable darkness that pulls in everything in the room. and if a character fails a saving throw of a DC 11,
Wow, that's actually lower than the one in the DM's guide.
yeah, anything that's pulled into it is utterly destroyed.
I'm
And
good with that.
it happens again in another room. There's another sphere of the same thing. And I think this is a Sphere of Annihilation. Anything they put into it that's not magical gets destroyed.
Yeah, I mean I believe even in the older editions, I'm pretty sure that like magic items got a saving throw. Non-magic items were just annihilated immediately.
Yeah. So yeah, so the funny part about this is they did the 1 full minute being pulled into this gravity well essentially, and two of them got pulled in. So he's going to play the clone version of his character when they get back to that room full of hags. And what happens is though is if you pull the right lever, in this case the actual right lever, you get teleported out of the room, which get teleported to the first floor at the front entrance. So they now, with a party of 3, have to work their way back down
Oh my
all 4
god, it's
floors of Tomb of Annihilation.
like the old fucking wizardry video game back in the 80s. Oh my god. That game was frustrating. It was a sort of a first person deal. You'd move around the floors and you'd get down to like a third or fourth floor of the dungeon and then die. So you'd have to create new characters to then go back down through those same levels to rescue the corpses of the other party and get them resurrected.
I love those old Wizardry games. I actually tried playing one. I think it was Wizardry 8. I built our LARP crew as a team. I think I had you and Kevin Hardy's character. I think I had D's and somebody else's. I can't remember.
Mhm.
And I go through and I take the spaceship to the Forgotten Land because that's how this wizardry opened up.
Yeah, I was about to say that they obviously went a different direction with the storytelling in the later wizardries.
And we landed. I got outside. I was stuck in a maze. So immediately put in this maze. And then the first fight happened. I'm doing the first fight, and I'm just getting slaughtered. And I'm like, why am I not doing any damage? And then I realized that this game didn't even do the automatic thing that most games do,
You
and
didn't
it
have
didn't even
weapons equipped.
equip my
Yep.
characters with anything.
So
And
the early wizardry games were the exact same way.
I immediately died, and I was like, I deserve that. I haven't booted it back up since.
Yeah, those were some of the most brutal fucking games. Yeah, people talk about Dark Souls being hard. Yeah, try playing wizardry. Try to beat that shit. Good luck.
Yeah, I had an Algo. That's all he did is play wizardry.
I mean, they were awesome. I never could finish that game. I'd get farther down. I'd finally get to my prestige class, as it were. You know, where because you only could start out, at least in the one I was playing. I don't remember which one it was. It was so long ago, but you could only have like one of 4 classes. You know, wizard, cleric, fighter, or rogue. But if you made it to level 7 or some shit like that, you could turn into another type of class depending on which one you were and what your stats were.
So I remember I picked up Might and Magic, I think.
Oh yeah, I remember those.
I think it was like 7, 8, or 9, something, maybe even 10. I can't remember which one. And I booted it up and I loved it, and it was fun to play. And I was like, okay, cool. I got to pick this up later. Like 4 years later, I pick it up. I go to play it again, but now it's owned by Ubisoft, and you have to go through the Ubisoft player to get to it.
Oh
So
fuck that.
I own it on Steam, and all Steam does is make me download and install the Ubisoft player, and then I have to have an account and stuff with them. And I was like, screw all that. I'm not going to do that. And
Effort. Yeah, anybody who works for those companies, pay attention. We hate that bullshit. I don't want to have to play on the Bethesda launcher just to play some Fallout 76. I don't want to do that.
who wants to play Fallout 76
Well,
other than me?
yeah, other than you, I don't know. It might be good by this point. Maybe we'll have to come back and try it out now.
Supposedly, it's a lot better, but
Yeah, it was entertaining for a while when the game first came out, but anyway, that's not D&D related.
So
get used to this, guys. Occasionally, this podcast is going to go off the fucking rails.
So back to about how ruthless we should be. I want them to. I basically I told myself that I don't want the players to die due to me dicking them over with not having a long rest. I want to kill them by dropping them in a lava pool in the very next room. I want the aboleth to fucking destroy them. I want the apatol thing to devour them. I want whatever the Lich's name was, the Syriac. I want him to power kill them. I want them to die that way. I don't want them to die
I will say,
because
I will definitely say, as a player, it feels better if you die going down in a fight,
yeah,
as opposed to you can't really fight because you have no abilities left because you couldn't rest. That would, I'd deal with it. I would suck it up, but it would definitely not feel as good as getting my ass kicked by a lich.
right. They've made it this far. They survived a lot of traps. They are just kind of going straight there. I'll be honest. There's no way they're going to win the final fight. They don't have. By the time this comes out, we'll be done. We're a session or two away. So they don't have enough of the 9 gods inhabiting them for them to actually be able to fight against Asarak,
Mm-hmm.
whatever his name is.
It's Asarak, I believe. I've always heard it that way.
So without their temporary hit point buff that they get each round, and without the advantages that they get from them, I don't think there's a possibility they could win, because all I have to do is just a couple AoEs and hurt them. And then powered kill, you're dead. Powered kill, you're dead. Oh, all right. Dimensional door, bye. Time stop. Poof.
Yeah, Power Word Kill, I kind of always joke about it being a worthless spell, but if you are able to get somebody at low enough hit points, it's really potent.
Yeah, it really is, and I've been kind of rereading his stat block over and over again, so I can do that fight justice. But I don't know if they're going to be able to get to the fight. The guy beforehand's pretty rough.
Well, at this point, they have an entire dungeon to go through.
I'm probably going to hand wave that, to be honest.
I wouldn't. I'd make them do it.
The way Tomb of Annihilation is set up is like they have the central corridor, and there's a big spiral staircase down, and all you got to do is just hop on a staircase and run down, and you'll get down to the 4th floor.
Okay, yeah. See that? I don't see an issue with that then.
Yeah. Then you jump to the 5th floor, and then you're stuck in this giant gear room, which at this point in time, I'm just going to say that they figure out a way.
How did they get by it last time?
They got by it last time by having the druid shift the gears around, and then her shape-shifting into a very small flying animal, and flying out of the room, and then squeezing in between, where the wall kind of lines up. You can get by with it gaseous form. So if you're a hummingbird, you can fit through.
Do they have a character to do that with this time?
No.
Sounds like to me they need to get through it a different way.
There's no other way to get through without leaving somebody behind. Or you leave someone behind and you go through and you fight through 2 encounters to use a secret passageway to get into the control room, which they, at that point in time, since the druid is going to be in the cage in the floor below as the clone, they don't have anyone to kind of get up there. And technically, now that I think about it, the rooms are aligned in such a way that the door is already open, and the one wheel and the other wheel are pointing towards each other. So they're just going to drop into a room with full poison, and they're going to just run right out and get it. So yeah, I can just hand wave it all. They left it in the right configuration by happenstance.
I find it funny because anybody listening to our conversation is probably thinking I'm the most ruthless fucking DM that's ever lived. I'm laughing about your players getting massacred by Spheres of Annihilation. I'm talking about forcing players to go through scenarios they've already completed, when the simple truth of it is I'm probably the most milquetoast DM out there. Like I can't tell you the last time I killed a player. Probably it would have been 3rd edition, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't killed many players in a normal game. Tomb is definitely the exception. I was actually watching a YouTube video of a guy playing through Tomb of Horrors, and he was commenting on how Tomb of Horrors was the worst dungeon ever created. And it's only because of nostalgia that it actually is kept in people's memories the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
And he brought up a couple interesting points about, like, if you play it just by the book, there's not enough context clues to get you through the tomb to the end of it. And most of the traps are either you just instantaneously die or you're instantaneously teleported back to the beginning of the dungeon without your gear.
Yep.
And the problem with his logic, and he even brings it up himself, is it's not meant to be a dungeon crawl. It was meant to be, hey, we're playing this at Gen Con or wherever it was, and we have to see how far you guys can get. Tell us how far you guys get. You have 4 hours. And that was it. And that's all that it was built for. So when you sit back and you look at it like from a dungeon crawling perspective, it's not built that way. It's built like a it's it's like that show on Nickelodeon back in the day with the
Most
talking.
Extreme Elimination Challenge.
It's almost like that, yes. But I was thinking of with the show on Nickelodeon where it had like this talking tomb guy. And he had to get medals and shit, and he'd run through
I
this
remember the
weird.
one you're talking about.
Man,
It's part of the problem of that sort of a comparison too is you're literally comparing 1st edition to 5th edition. Yeah, 1st edition was brand new. Nobody knew what the hell they were doing back then. These were the first tabletop role-playing games in existence. This was 45, 50 years ago. We've had a long time to have come a long way in the ability, in the crafting of these things. To redo Tomb of Annihilation or Tomb of Horrors is fine, but you're going to have to make certain necessary changes to it to make it palatable to people who play nowadays.
and that's exactly what Tomb of Annihilation is.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you compare the two back to back, Tomb of Annihilation is 100-fold what Tomb of Horrors is. But everything you see in Tomb of Horrors is in Tomb of Annihilation, but presented in a way that is, I'm a fantasy character in a fantasy world with fantasy tombs that I'm crawling through
Yeah.
and have answers to. You could very easily play Tomb of Annihilation and die in the first floor, but it doesn't.
You can actually die just trying to get into the tomb.
Yeah, but it really doesn't happen unless you're being extra dumb about it.
Yeah.
So
I just know that I know a couple of the entrances to get in are trapped. The odds of it killing you are really, really small, but it is possible.
And that's the best part of Tomb of Annihilation is it ramps up from like, hey, we can do the first floor, we're fine. We can do the second floor, we're fine. Third floor, that one encounter is a little rough. Okay, here's the 4th floor. Okay, these things are getting really rough. Okay, here's the 5th floor. What the hell are we doing? And here's the 6th floor, and you've lost.
Yep.
I mean, most of the encounters in the 6th floor is, like I said, especially with the hags and their abilities leading up to it. The hags in the fight being able to teleport you back into room 57 and just taking you out of the fight completely as they just murder the rest of the team.
I mean, that's smart. If you're able to do that.
Yeah. The fact that they will just take a key of one of the 5 keys from you and then just disappear into the ethereal plane.
It's
okay.
Yeah. I mean,
Done.
this is sort of the. It goes along with how ruthless do you want to be discussion as a DM in the aspect of you have to utilize the strategies that the bad guys would utilize. I tend to use wraiths or things that can phase pretty often, and it is nothing for me to have one of them attack and then just phase through a wall. or just to completely disappear. Occasionally, I've even had the big bad evil guy, not of a whole campaign, but of that fight that they're going through, just teleport the hell out and come back after them later.
You gotta turn into a doppelganger and stab somebody in the back and push them into an acid pit.
Yeah, exactly. The bad guys can't be stupid unless they actually are stupid. You need them to utilize the strategies that they would use in combat. It needs to be as I personally I like it to be as sort of realistic as could be in a fantasy setting. I try to kill the cleric first a lot of time. Maybe that's why my players don't ever play clerics.
Probably, yeah.
That would make sense. If it's not them, then I end up going for the wizards or the the other spellcasters first because they tend to be the squishiest and die the easiest.
Well, that's why when I wrote my adventure and put it up on DM's Guild, which you can buy right now on DM's Guild, it's called Dread of the Ice Devil.
Yeah. So you managed to get silver medal in 2 days.
We'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
but when I wrote the second encounter in that and had the Mind Master, who's an invisible, reduced in size Duergar.
Fuck that guy. He almost killed me.
I put in there as like he will move to the furthest back player and attack them by himself because
he am playing a sorcerer.
Yeah, because he can't be in the front line. And I don't want people to put him on the front line, so I kind of like, okay, I'm going to kind of force your hand a little bit so you play him right. He's going to get to the back. He's going to stabbity, and then the sorcerer's going to die.
Almost. I had a few hit points left.
He took you from like what, full to like 2?
Something like that. I was very, very low. I was under 10. I know that. I don't remember the exact numbers.
I picture a lot of people dying in that encounter because of the Mind Master.
Oh, it's certainly possible, yeah. I mean, he got that sneak attack on me, and yeah, my hit points just disappeared.
Yeah, because especially if the squishy healer is back there.
Oh yeah. And mind you, I was lucky that I had a large Constitution bonus for the character. So otherwise, if I had if my con had been 2 points lower or 1 point lower, it would have killed me.
Yeah. And it's all because of that psychic damage that he does. It's just Duergar have become my second favorite monster type to use.
Favorite
because they can turn invisible.
No, what is your favorite? You said Duergar, your second favorite.
Oh, my favorite is goblins.
Oh, okay.
Not 5th edition goblins, 4th edition goblins, because they were amazing.
Okay, I'll let you finish your what you were talking about, and then you have to explain what's the difference because I have no clue.
So yeah, Duergar are my second favorite. I've been playing against them a lot and with them a lot, and I just love the fact that they all can just be invisible.
That's some bullshit, by the way.
Then they have they're enlarge and reduce, and usually they can pick one or the other. I think a couple like really special ones can do both. And then you have like the Duergar Hammerers and the Duergar Screamers, which are basically constructs that have Duergars on the inside of them, and usually in reduced form or normal form, driving these big fucking constructs around to do things. And
I mean, that's kind of cool. I'll grant you that. It's like a dwarf mecha.
Yeah. So like if you're fighting a Duergar Hammerer and like you have a passive perception of like better than 12 or something, and I think I even mentioned this when you guys are playtesting it, you can see the guy inside. So you just have this advantage to attack the fucking Duergar on the inside of the mech suit. And if he dies, which he has like no hit points, if he dies, the whole mech suit shuts down.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. And then, on top of that, they have the whole Mind Flayer connection and a really good story and history from, being enslaved by the Mind Flayers and having all joy and happiness sucked out of them. I think there's a lot of potential there.
People I know.
Yeah. But yeah, I've been enjoying using those guys a lot, and it's kind of why I put my adventure the way it was.
I mean, they were good. I admit they make good villains, and for the adventure that you put together, yeah, they worked very well. Plus, it's not surprising to find them in the setting that they were in.
Yeah.
So goblins.
So 5th edition goblins and 4th edition goblins are fairly similar. 4th edition, one of the biggest complaints about 4th edition was it was very video gamey.
That is correct.
And
Yeah.
part of that was how the ability system was laid out, but it's neither here nor there. Another reason why it felt very video gamey is 4th edition had a very unique monster type known as a minion. Okay, a minion was classified as
Banana.
what?
Banana. Go ahead.
Okay, I got it. A minion type monster was a monster that basically died to a single hit, no matter what it was. And it was meant to basically give the players this feeling of indestructibility and you're just cutting your way through tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of just trash monsters that kind
So
of
it's
get to
like
the big one.
Diablo.
Yes. And so that was one of the things that they kind of did. They kind of shift away from the slower game that was 3.5 to a little bit more action oriented tabletop. So goblins had a lot of minions. They had the cutters and the snipers. So you kind of the cutters were minions, the snipers were just an actual monster variant. So you would cut your way through all these like little goblins, and then you get to the snipers who are basically doing all the damage in the back, and you'd kill those snipers. The other thing is that the amount of different goblin types that they had officially in 4th edition was huge. Every monster book came out with a new, like, additional group of goblins. So you had your cutthroats, your black mage, your warriors, your beast riders, your wolf riders, your hexers, your hurlers, your underbosses, skull cleavers, and those are like all the first book. And then you look at 5th edition goblins, you have goblin and goblin other goblin. There's like 3, and it was just so sad. So I just use the 4th edition goblins because there's so many and they're all cool and different and have these neat abilities to them that it works. Like my favorite goblin is the goblin shaman, who just creates this black like cloud that doesn't cause difficult terrain or doesn't cause any damage. It's high enough that it just covers the goblins' heads, and the goblins don't have any problem seeing through this cloud, but all the players do, no matter what kind of vision you have. So they're running around hitting you, and then you try to hit them, and since you have disadvantage to hit them, within 4th edition was just -2, but still you had disadvantage to hit them.
Mm-hmm.
They would just shift away from you without provoking opportunity because you missed them, and they would run around again and just flank you and murder you. They just had much more life to them than 5th edition goblins did.
I get it. There's much more creativity from the team that were making things.
Right.
Personally, all I need is goblin stats. That's it.
And that's exactly how 5th edition
Yeah, the way I DM, that's literally all I need is just goblin stats. I will make 10 different types of goblins. Like that's going to happen whether I have other versions of it or not.
Right.
I think that's kind of what they expect out of the people running the games. A lot of times is you have to get creative, and once again I come from that old 2nd edition background where I didn't actually have access to a lot of the monsters, so I would have to make things up, create things, and I've just been doing it for so long that it becomes ingrained to do it that way. I'm sorry. I'm glad that in 4th edition they did release all that, because it can definitely help even somebody like me. I see one of these and it can send my mind down a different route to make a goblin that's different than what I would make.
Yeah. And 4th edition was a much bigger miniature combat style game.
Mm-hmm.
And I've mentioned before that I'm much more miniature combat style DM, and having those guys. So I bought every goblin I could find. So I have an entire box that I take with me whenever I DM. That is just goblins.
And conveniently enough, they work fine in 5th edition too.
They work fine in 5th edition. But you got to do like you said. I have to change the weapons on the fly, and I'd have to manually put them into D&D Beyond if I was using that and their encounter builder, and that just takes time out of my day where I could be prepping other stuff.
Yeah.
Whereas if they would just release an actual book full of just goblins officially and put them into the system, I can just pull those things down and it wouldn't take all my time.
You won't get an argument from me on that. Like, yeah, I do use Roll20 now, unfortunately, and it does take a little extra time for me to make 4 different variants of a a creature. A lot of times I run. I've been running the Gnomish campaign, and lately they've been running into a lot of bandits, things of that nature. So I'll create a bandit, or I'll just pull a monster over from the monster manual, and then I'll just copy it like 3 times, and then alter the stats on all of them to make variants of it. One this other one might have an extra +1 to hit using a different type of weapon. This guy, well, they have different armor and a shield, but effectively they are the same thing. Maybe a few more hit points on these guys and less on these.
Yeah. Well, see, what I did in 5th edition or 4th edition was I would obtain backup copies of the books in PDF format for backup purposes only. And I would basically just screen cap the monster stats, pull them over into my program, and I would just, cross out and add in like these changes. Like, okay, he doesn't have a shield or scimitar. He has a long sword that he's dual wielding. Okay, here's a 1d8 instead of a 1d6
Hmm.
or 1d10 or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'd make those changes and I would print out that I would have like, okay, here's encounter one's monsters, here's encounters two monsters, here's encounters three monsters. And so I had stuff an easy reference for me. And I could just reuse those encounters later on because of how I was categorizing them and all that. But now because I use D&D Beyond and because other people use Roll20 and Fantasy Grounds, if it's not official content, you got to homebrew it, and it just takes time and just
It does. Yeah. It adds
and
time.
I understand there's a lot of books out there, and Wizards is probably under this weird time frame where they have to make books that are new and appealing at the same time keep people interested and keep the story moving forward. So they really can't just release a new monster manual. But they already have released a couple monster manuals.
Yeah, I mean, you have Volos, which half that book is new monsters. I don't
And
think there's really.
Mordecai's.
Yeah, and Mordecai's, which I still
Yeah.
do not own a copy of, unfortunately. I need to get one.
But like in 4th edition there was Monster Manual 1, 2, and 3.
Hmm.
And I liked that. Like I liked what they did here,
I mean, that was
having
that was just a pullover from 3rd edition. 2nd edition was the most interesting because 2nd edition released basically folios or compendiums. That's what it was. It was compendiums, and it was and there were a lot of them out there. You can probably look them up on eBay, just monster compendiums, and they were rather relatively cheap at that time period to get them, and there were, God, I don't know, 20 of them, 30 of them, just a massive amount of monsters for 2nd edition. Very
yeah.
useful.
And I
And
think a lot of that is shifted to, DM's Guild from what I've seen now.
yeah,
Where they're like, hey, we're not gonna make a thing full of goblins. You homebrew it and sell it in DM's Guild instead.
yeah. But look, I love this idea. It allows people like myself, like yourself, to actually make something off of our creativity if we're willing to go through the time to do it. Just because you recently released your module, it got me very interested in actually doing stuff on there. Otherwise, I probably never would have considered it. So at the moment, I don't know that I'm really in the arena of writing modules and whatnot. Maybe at some point. But as far as creating magic items or even creating, other monster types, I'm all for that.
Yeah.
That is,
And one thing that I struggle with too is because there's just so much out there already that's official,
hmm
and then there's so much out there that's homebrew on DM's Guild that like I almost like feel like I shouldn't release it because it's just going to get lost in the shuffle and it's just going to become another PDF on the DM's Guild and no one's going to read it, no one's going to care. et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
See,
And
my thoughts on it is if I create all of this stuff, and if 5 people ever get use out of it, then that's 5 people that I've helped out.
yeah, I have this weird thing ingrained in me that if that success has to be spectacular or it's not a success.
Well,
And it's something I've struggled with for decades.
so far you're off to a pretty good success on your adventure.
Yeah, I put a lot of time into it. I put a lot of time into advertising it. I put a lot of time into marketing it.
Oh, I
And
know. I barely saw you for 2 straight weeks.
and then even when I started marketing it on like Twitter and Reddit and Facebook, it just showed me how much more is out there that I haven't even begun to scratch the surface on.
Mhm.
So many unique um, podcasts are out there. So many unique DM groups of people just playing, Dungeons and Dragons on Twitch
Oh God,
and
there's
streaming it.
tons of them. Tons of them.
Yeah, and like, so how am I going to matter in this bucket of everything, And
The difference is consistency. Every time, so I've just recently started writing on Medium.com, and I'm trying to go the route of being a professional writer, and beyond writing, but whether it comes to working out, whether it comes to learning martial arts, whether it comes to playing a video game, you get better at it, and you get noticed by just being consistent at it. If you do it all the time and just keep chugging away, sooner or later, people will pay attention. This podcast is in the early days. I mean, this will probably be episode 8 or 9. We're around there, and at this point, we've got a few hundred listens on our podcast that we released. But if we ever make it up to episode 100, I would certainly hope that by that point we have a lot more.
yeah,
Just got to release content regularly and keep chugging away.
yep. And that's what I'm trying to do. It's the change I'm trying to make this year because I have all this free time.
Yeah, we both do right now. Yeah, you also learned that marketing sucks.
It really does.
Like,
And there's a lot of I guess it's imposter syndrome going on. There's a lot of stuff going on in my head right now that I can't put any rhyme or reason to. But it's just I feel like not that I don't deserve it. It's just like maybe I did price it too low and I ruined all the people's chances to get things. And
nah, I don't think so. The idea was to get it noticed, get your name out there. You succeeded at that. It'll be on sale by the time this podcast comes out. It will no longer be on sale, and you will have priced it up accordingly. But it also, this was something you weren't sure about. You didn't know about. You've never put anything out on DM's Guild. I know
yeah,
that any further releases we go will be priced more accurately. It won't be the massive discount the first one was.
no. But yeah, just even wow, just the amount of people like I would post on Twitter to at DM's Guild like, hey, here's my first adventure. Everyone else is posting it as well too.
Hmm.
And here's 75 different reviewers and 35 different podcasts and 19 different D&D DM Twitch people.
Yep.
It's just so much stuff out there. So many artists, like fantastic artists. Like, I don't understand how everyone just has that amount of talent and isn't just being instantly recognized across the board for everything.
But it is like you said, there are so many of them. People. There are two ways that people sort of get famous in those scenarios. It's either you already know somebody who's famous that helps you get famous, or through consistent work. Very few people actually make it overnight. You always hear about this music group that came up, this overnight sensation, and the truth of that is that person has been chugging through dive bars and shithole locations for a decade before anyone ever takes notice of them.
Yeah.
So
Like,
I hope we can do it in less than a decade. But
okay, so here's a funny example. I just got a follow from somebody on Twitter moments ago, and while you're talking, I clicked and brought it up, and their name is Kaek, Kaek. Twitter handles at KAEK_art, and I'm looking at their art, and it's fantastic.
mm-hmm.
And they have she has a crab here that's got like it was a crab but grew through a gear almost, and it's an amazing piece of work, and it matches a monster that I designed for my home campaign before the beginning of this year happened. So it's just weird to see just all that idea and creativity is just already out there, and just like
Yep, and
we're gonna
so much
we're
of
gonna
it will go unsung and unheralded because for whatever reason, they aren't able to get it out to the masses.
it's definitely sad, but there's a lot of creativity going on out there, and I think a lot of people definitely deserve more attention that they're getting, and hopefully ours becomes popular enough that we can start hiring artists and stuff like that to make a campaign book.
Well, that would be wonderful. I think we're a long ways from that point, though.
It's possible. I mean, it's definitely going to be like a side project, but
Hey, believe me, I would love to turn Hobtown into a legitimate, actual campaign setting. But I definitely am not planning for that. Not at the moment. I have a lot of other things I'm working on right now. I think we've wasted enough of people's times.
maybe. So well, before we go, I have to tell you my wife's new character,
Yeah,
and it
go
is
for it.
the best character she's made to date, and I have to pull up the stats here in a moment. So 1 second. Okay, so she created a new character. She wanted to try something different. She was playing a Kenku rogue.
Oh,
Okay,
okay. I already hate this character.
it gets better.
I see the name. Go ahead and say it.
Her name is,
Yep.
and it's this little fat raven, and she based it off of there's a GIF out there of a bird that's going for a job interview, and it's like firm handshake, direct eye contact, get poofy, wear your sock, always be beeping, sparkles because you're worth it. And that's basically what she built. She built that bird as a Kenku rogue,
That's
and
that's fantastic.
so she rolled her stats, and she got above average stats, but she got a 9. And she's like, I really wanted, when I mimic people, I really want it to be the SpongeBob meme. You know what I'm talking about? The
Hmm.
sarcastic response where people retype the people's what they say and like the weird capitalization. Like,
Yep.
I'm not going to the park. I'm not going to the park. So she took her lowest stat, which would be a negative or 9, and put that into charisma.
Of course. Yeah.
So the Kenku bird, it's not that it's trying to be sarcastic, it just has really bad charisma. So whenever it repeats something, it repeats it as a snarky SpongeBob.
Oh
Oh.
my god.
So she's sitting there like on top of this wardrobe, and the players are talking. She's like, it's just, I think we should go up the hallway. I think we should go up the hallway. I could not. I felt like I was going to have a heart attack. I was laughing so hard. I had to mute myself. I had to remove myself from the room. It was it was just the best. Like,
Hopefully everybody else was having fun with it too.
oh, they were.
Okay, good.
Like they were handing out health potions. Like, hey, does anyone need a health potion? Anybody need a
Anyone need
health
a health
potion?
potion? See, I personally, I love I love the history of the Kenku, the story behind the Kenku lore. I love it. It is fantastic. It's wonderful. I hate Kenku as characters though. They are generally, and your wife's helping to prove my point. They're generally the most annoying goddamn character in the group. I
So
think the only thing probably more annoying is people who play Tabaxis. Back in second edition or third edition, that would have been people that were playing Kinders. But yeah, it's always just sort of that little group of just annoying to be annoying.
right, but it's adorable. It
Yeah,
is
and this is no shot at your wife. Obviously, it's just Kenku players I've played, and it's from my same group of players. But every time one of them plays a Kenku, I just get irritated with it.
the other player that had a reroll re-rolled a chef, and she's just playing Gordon Ramsay. So
That's oh my god, I could have so much fun doing that.
so we started off the session with Gordon Ramsay showing up in the Tomb of Annihilation and a Kenku bird that repeats people sarcastically. And one of the more senior players, the guy's played for a long time, he's just like, so we've reached the joke character level of Tomb of Annihilation.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Once you've killed off 7 or 8 characters, at that point, everybody's just like, I'm just gonna make something up. It doesn't matter what it is, because it's just gonna die anyway.
but her character's like neutral good and is very happy and wants to help and wants to do good things. She saved multiple players from falling into the Sphere of Annihilation and dying horribly, like multiple times. It's this little tiny Kenku bird. But whenever she repeats something, he says, meh, meh, meh. Uh,
All
and
right,
like,
guys.
no. So there's another thing too
Uh-oh.
where the artificer had built walkie-talkies so they could, you know, try to make the changing of the gears easier. And so like they're trying to have this conversation back and forth with the guy playing the druid, who's very ditzy and kind of like I said naive. And they started having this argument. He's like, no. When you finish the conversation, you have to say over, over. And he's like,
Over.
wait, I have to say over? And they're doing the whole like Family Guy skit or
Yeah.
the
Yep.
Laurel and Hardy skit. And then my wife is just in the background going over, 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 over.
Okay, see, that's actually a good use of that ability.
It just, oh my god, it was so perfect. It was a great night. Well, I wasn't very grumpy at all.
Fantastic. Yeah, we gotta be more grumpy in the future. I keep saying that, and yet it rarely happens. Although we do have a couple of really good ones that we need to release sometime soon.
Maybe. All right, goodbye.
All right, Craig. Bye.
Goodbye, Craig.